Hi guys, John Siddle here. In this video I'm going to teach you how to edit your drone videos in Davinci Resolve 18.6 free. This is hands down the best video editing software out there. I've included sample files so you can follow along. I'm going to assume that you have no background in Davinci Resolve. We're going to start with the absolute basics. I'll show you how to get Davinci Resolve for free, input your media into the software, use the edit page to tell your story, add music, transitions and titles, make your colours look really great. Then we'll go on to how to render your video so you can upload it to YouTube, Facebook and other social media platforms. There's lots of great tips to speed up your workflow, so by the end of this video you'll have a really good sense of how you can use Davinci Resolve. We also have a Facebook group where Davinci Resolve users can help each other out, plus you can get a free title pack from DaVinciResolveTitles.com, links are in the description. Let me know in the comments below how you got on. Let's get into it. To get the free version of Davinci Resolve, head on over to blackmagicdesign.com and just click on Davinci Resolve, and then you'll see a screen where you've got the free download, and there's also one called Studio, which is a paid version. The main difference between the two is the Studio version has lots of AI functions, like it will generate subtitles for you and it'll handle higher resolution. If you are doing a lot of editing, you can go and get things like control panels, like a speed editor. That's great, and that comes with Davinci Resolve Studio included. The same with the keyboard. If you know you're going to be doing a lot of work in video editing, then I'll highly recommend using these because it will speed up your workflow and you'll get it all done quicker. The first time you load Davinci Resolve, you're going to be greeted with the project manager. Yours will probably just have untitled project. Mine has several projects because I do various work for different companies. And the way I do it is each company has its own project. So I have one for a security company, one for a camping company. First thing you want to do is go new project, give it a name, and then press create. Resolve is designed to do everything after you finish filming, from importing media to editing, doing special effects, doing all your sound, and then finally delivering to different platforms. It's very capable software and really well thought out. If we take a look, we've got 7 pages. So down here we've got the media. So we class media as like the files that you filmed. You can import them here. Then we've got a cut page for doing quick edits. This is the main one we're going to focus on, is the edit page, where we can do all our things like drop our media in, add our music files. And then Fusion, this is for special effects like visual effects, like adding titles and animations. Then we've got the color page, so we can make our colors look absolutely amazing, which is known as color grading. And then we've got the one with the little music symbol, Fairlight. This is where you can do all your audio mastering. So if you want to add like Dolby surround sound, Dolby Atmos, you could do that in here, or mix your music. And finally, we've got the deliver page. And this allows us to export to things like YouTube, Vimeo, Twitter, TikTok, and various different platforms. It's fully optimized, so when you select one of these options, it's going to be the right quality and the right settings. But it's always a good idea to set up your project correctly by going to the little cog in the bottom right hand corner here where it says project settings. Click on that. This will allow you to set your resolution, but this is the really important bit to remember. Try and set this to the same frame rate you shot your drone footage in. I shoot all mine in 30 frames a second, so I just personally think it looks better. If you're on like an FPV drone, you might want to set it to 60 frames a second if you're shooting it at a higher frame rate. If you're shooting it higher than that, just keep scrolling down because it also goes up to 120 frames a second here. So with mine, I'm just going to set it to 29.97 because I know that's what my drone shoots in. And then I just press save. And that's all we need to do on here. Don't touch any of the rest of the settings. Leave them as they are. To get started, the first thing we're going to do is go down here to our media tab. And if we look up here on the top left hand side, if you can't see this, click on this switch and that should make it appear, or also media storage. And then we can see over here we've got our different hard drives. So I've got my main operating system drive. I tend to edit on an external drive, so if I went into the drive I can expand it, go to videos, and here's all my video folders. In this case I'm going to use Davinci Resolve Training. So it's showing us all the contents of that folder, and all we need to do to import them is highlight them from here and drag them into the media pool. And it's going to allow us to use these clips in the project. If they're in this window, we'll be able to edit them in the project. If they're up here and we haven't imported them, we won't be able to use them yet. I'll show you another way to do this. I'll delete these, so I select them all, delete. The other way to do it is if you find the folder in Finder or File Explorer, you can just highlight them like this and just drag them into the media library. And you see it does exactly the same thing, it imports our clips. If you import your media into Davinci Resolve and you see this, what on earth is that? It says, do I want to change my project frame rate? I don't know. Don't worry, what it means is if you set your project at the wrong frame rate, and say for instance I've set my project at 60 frames a second and my drone footage is 30, it's just DaVinci Resolve trying to tell me that if you press change, it's going to change that to the correct project frame rate for me. And all mine's shot at 29.97 frames a second, and basically it's matching my project to that as well. If you select a clip and move your mouse over it, we can see it's giving us a preview in this window up here. You can also use the controls to play. If we want to stop, you can go back to the start of the clip or to the end of the clip. And also you can loop the clip so it keeps playing over and over again. If I click on here, move our playhead to this part and then press play, we should see the clip will keep looping. There we go. Over on the right here, it just tells you a little bit about the clip details. Now we're going to dive into the edit page. And to make sure everything's looking correctly, just go up to workspace, and then you want to go to reset UI layout, and then we'll all be looking at the same resolution and screen. So as it was before, we've got our clips. So there's our media. Again, it's got a source viewer on the left, and this is our timeline viewer on the right hand side. If I drag one of these clips down here into our timeline, we'll now see that it's appeared in the right hand window. Think of this as our finished product. So the window on the right is like your final output. And what happens if you're trying to play this clip back, but it doesn't play back very smoothly? I'm on a modern Mac and it will just eat video clips for breakfast, no problems. If you're on an older computer, what we can do, we can convert the clips into a better format for your system. We can select them by holding down Control or Command on the Mac, select the clips, and then right click, and then you're looking for Generate Optimized Media, and you'll see a little progress bar. And it'll take a couple of moments, and what it's doing is it's creating media that your system can use much more easily. It's making smaller files, so your processor's not going to be struggling, and then you should have a much smoother editing experience. Once it's done the generated media, you've done your edit, and you do the export, the system's clever enough to know that it will export at maximum quality at the high resolution that you shot it at. I'm going to take a quick look at our timeline just so you understand the layout. So in this area here, this is like our main video timeline where we're telling the story, we're putting all the clips together in the order that we want, and we can add music and sound. And we've got our source viewer where we can view the clips, and our output window. Up in the top left corner, we've got our media pool. We can turn that on and off, which will give us a bit more space to work. Initially, when I'm starting an edit, I'll leave this on because I want to choose my clips and drop them onto the timeline. And also up here, we've got the effects window. So you can add in different effects, and it gives you little previews as you hover your mouse over them. Turn that off. Index is kind of like a list. You've got a sound library which is built into Resolve. You can download that and use royalty-free sounds from DaVinci Resolve. To close it, just click on it and it'll disappear. We'll bring up our media pool. And over on the right-hand side, up in the top right, we've got quick export. So if I wanted to export this quickly, I could press that, and it'll say where do you want to export it to. So if I wanted to export a video for YouTube, I could click that and press export. We've got our mixer, which will show us our sound levels on the right hand side. Metadata, I don't really use that too much. Again, it just tells us a bit about our clips. An inspector, this is a really useful one to know because we can do things like adjust the size of the clip by zooming in and out, adjusting the position, moving it left and right. So this gives us a lot of really cool options. And then moving on to our middle section here, if we click on this, this gives us different timeline views. We can adjust it, like so we can have it as blocks. I always tend to leave it on the defaults because that works really well. We can adjust the height of the video track, so you can make them thinner, or you can make your audio tracks bigger. And then over here, we've got various tools, which I'll cover when we get into the editing process. On our timeline, we can press that. That'll make our timeline fill the entire space down here. We can zoom in and out. We've got a plus and minus, so if I move it to the left, it zooms us out, and if I move it to the right, it zooms us in. So let's go and do some fun stuff then. I'm going to just delete this off my timeline, so I just click on it, and I press delete, and that's going to remove the clip. What we're now going to do is have a look at using the source window and marking it in and out point, so it means choosing the bit of the clip we want, and then we're going to add it to the timeline. So on our first clip, I double click it, and by pressing the space bar, or the play button, it's going to start our clip playing. With the drone, I'm thinking I'll probably start the clip about there. And what we can do is mark what we call an in point. So I can either press this button here, and you see there, it's put a little dot. You see the little dot there, that's our in point. So I can press space bar or the play button. and then give it a couple of seconds, and then I want my shot to finish just about there. So I press the spacebar to stop, and then I can press the out button. And what it's doing is it's just using this section here to this section here. And then what we can do, we can either drag that down onto our timeline, and you'll now see the same clips in the viewer, and it's just used that section of the clip. It hasn't lost any of this at the start, that's still there in the media library, or any of the end here, but it's just saying that's the bit we've chosen and that's the bit we want to use in our clip. So I'll go to the next clip, go back to the start, I'll press the space bar, wait for the drone to start moving. Once it's moving, I'm gonna use keyboard shortcuts, so I press I for in, press spacebar to play, and let the clip run for a little while until it gets to the point where I think, yeah, that's where I want to put my next out point. Press the spacebar to stop, O for out, or you can use that button. But this time what we're going to do, I'll show you another really good trick. If I drag this into the window here, it gives us a load of options. So we can insert on top, we can overwrite, replace, fit to fill. The one we want to use, and this is one I use most of the time, is append at end. Watch what happens. This clip is now gone from here to after this clip. So if I did that again, went append to end, you see what it's done is it's just put that clip on the end, and it's there twice, so we don't want that, so I just click on it, delete it. So all that's doing is just choosing the bits of the clip we want. So I just go through each clip, and what I do is find the start point. If the drone's adjusting the camera, take all that out, and then I'd go from here where it's looking good, press in, go all the way with this, and then we might cut about there. Go drag it across, append that end, and this is where our timeline controls come in quite handy. By pressing this button, it's going to go to full extent zoom, so it's going to show us all our clips on the timeline. Alright, so I've added all my clips onto the timeline. I've just chosen the best bit from each section. And what I tend to do now is once I've got them on the timeline, is I close my media pool, so I've got a bit more room to work. So we've got a bigger timeline view now. And you can do things like change the order of the clip. If you want to move the clips around, if I wanted to swap the first and the second one round, what I need to do is lift the second one up, move it across, and I can move our first clip to the right. You see it snaps into place, and I can pull it down like that. So I could set the order as I wanted it to be. Some other things we can do with the clips. Say for instance your clip, you want it a bit shorter, you put it in the timeline, you want to shorten it. We can grab the end here, can you see there, those little handles appear, and I could shorten it, and it's showing us in the window where our clip's going to finish. Again, I could do the same with here, I could do it on the left hand side, and we can start the clip a bit later on. And then just to remove this gap, just click in the gap, we see it changes colour, and then I just press delete, and that'll close the gap. Another thing we can do is adjust between the two clips. If I slide it to the left, we see now it's going to start putting more of our clip on the right in and less of the clip on the left. So those are all little things you can do to fine tune it. If you want to move a group of clips, we can highlight them, so you select the ones you want. Again, we just do similarly what we did before, lift them up, move them, and we can move the ones on the bottom, grab those, move them over to the right, it all snaps into place. And then we can just select these and drop them down. So you can play around with the order of your clips pretty easily by highlighting, dragging and dropping and selecting. Next up, we're going to add some music to our clip because, you know, having a video without music is pretty dull. So I'll show you how to do that now. So I've found the music that I want. I'm just going to drag it into our media library, let go, and we can view it the same way as we do normal source media by double clicking on it. And our playhead's at the start of the music, and then you can see what you've got up here is a waveform. So that's the sound wave of the track. So what you need to do is press play, find where you want the track to start, and mark an out point, or you can drag the whole track onto the timeline like this. So if I drag this down, we see there we've got a nice green audio track which snaps into place. Again, you could trim your clips to fit the length of the music, and one thing you can do is with the music track, if it's too loud, I'll show you how you can adjust the volume on it. You see, as I move my mouse over it, it goes to those little two arrows. If you need to turn the volume down, hold the mouse button and move it down, and that will reduce the volume of it. If you move it upwards, that will increase the volume. Another way we can do this is by clicking on here and then going up into our inspector panel on the audio track. If you set it to 0, That's the normal track volume that you imported it at. And you could also adjust it from here. You could turn it down with this slider. As you can see, the wave format's getting smaller. As you move it up, the wave gets bigger. But I'll leave it for 0 because I'm quite happy with that. And that's how you add music to a track. I've gone ahead and trimmed our music track so it's a bit shorter and trimmed our clips to fit. So what about if you want to fade your music in? Because if I play it right now, it doesn't really fade in that smoothly. Put your playhead at the start and then move your mouse down, and can you see the little white symbol there? If I grab that and drag it to the right, that's going to fade in from the start of the clip from here to here, and we could do the same with a fade out. So if I grab this and move it this way, it fades our music in and our music fades out. We can also do the same with the video clips. You see we've got a handle there. If I move this and drag it across, I'm going to mute our sound. If you need to mute the music, you can press M to mute the track, and that'll turn the sound off on this track just for the purpose of the video. So now you see we've added a fade in here. As I press play, our clip fades in. And you can do the same. You have the clip fade out. So our clip will fade to black. But now you say, right, what if I want this clip to fade into this clip? What we need for that is what's called a transition. So we're looking for something like what we call a fade. So if you open your effects panel, we see you've got lots of different options here. We can go into video transitions, and you've got things like additive dissolve. If you move your mouse over it and move it from left to right, it should show you a preview. If I just put it on the cut, you see there it's giving us a preview of how that's going to look. So you can have things like blur dissolves, cross dissolves. So we'll just go for a cross dissolve, and what you want to do is drag it onto the 2 clips. Now when I play, we should see we get a dissolve from the first clip to the second clip. So that's added a dissolve onto our clip. If it does anything a bit odd, like we got a black flash, then I'll just go up to playback, render cache, and turn that on to smart. And what that's going to do is, we see this red line here. What it's doing is it's redrawing the frames for me, and it should play that back smoothly in a second. If you want to delete a dissolve, you can press Command plus or Control plus to zoom in. Select the dissolve. Now it's gone red, you can remove it. So you could try a different one. So we try blur dissolve, do exactly the same thing, drop it onto the timeline, and we'll wait for that to render. Once that goes blue, it means it's rendered it. So we've got our Honda Civic Type R there. What about if we wanted to add some text onto it? Well, to do that, we just want to make sure that our effects window is open, and then we can go down to here, and then you've got one called titles. So if you click on titles, we've got lots of different options. By hovering your mouse over them and moving left to right, you should see a preview. Click on the clip. Now hover the mouse over, and it should give you the preview of what that title is going to look like and how it's going to animate on. I'm just going to go with lower left third. So what I do is I just drag this on top of my car clip. To edit it, click on the text layer. Over on the right in our inspector panel, if that's not open, click this button here and you'll be able to see it. We see there's our title and there's our text underneath. So you can type in whatever you want. There's the name of the car, and then we can put Type R. And that has now added our title to this video clip. Give it a second to render. And some titles fade in and some don't. If we wanted this to fade in smoothly, we could just go to video transitions, and we could just add a cross dissolve onto this specific clip, and then our title will fade in as the clip fades in. So there's all different titles you can choose from. They'll work a very similar way. You can adjust things like the font. So if you know you want to use a different font, as you hover over it, you'll see in real time the font changes. And it works the same on the other one, and you can adjust things like the size. So if you can scale it up. If you mess it up, press Ctrl Z and that'll put it back. And you can adjust all sorts of things like the spacing and all your font styling like you would in Microsoft Word. Some keyboard shortcuts that you might find useful on the timeline. If you use the arrow keys up and down, if I press down, it'll move to the next clip. If I press the up arrow key, it will make us go back to the previous clip right at the start, and it always goes on the cut. We can also use our right arrow key, and this, each time I press it, will move it 1 frame. If I hold it, it will move 1 frame at a time. I'm just keeping my finger held down on it to move it. The other keys that are super useful to know are J, K, and L. J is like rewind, K is stop, and L is play forward. If you press L once, it'll play back at normal speed. If I press L again, it will speed up. We see now it's picking up a bit of speed. If I press it a third time, it goes faster and faster. And the same applies with J. If I want to play it backwards, once is normal time, press it again, it'll go faster, press it again, it'll go even quicker again. So those are quite handy ones for you to know. You can also use the home key if you want to go back to the start of your edit, and you can also use the end key if you want to go to the end. Once you're happy with your video edit and you think, okay, that's exactly the order I want it in, I've got my effects on and my titles, next thing I'm going to do is go and tweak the colours. I'll move our playhead back to the start of the video. I'm going to go into our colour page. This is where we can do some really cool stuff with it. I'm just going to make sure that our clip is selected. We've got our fade in there. So the way this works is, here's our main window. This is what we're going to be adjusting the colours on. And then we've got nodes, which is kind of like adding a colour effect. And I always make one colour effect on one node. So I do an exposure on the first node, adjust the contrast, adjust the saturation of the clip, and we'll see the clip will start to look good pretty quickly. First node, I'm going to right click on it, go node label. We're going to call this exposure because this is going to adjust our brightness. So we've got a couple of wheels here just to show you what these do. The first one, lift, this is like boost the brightness or darkness in the shadows. If I move it to the left, we should see our dark areas get darker, and if I move it to the right, our dark areas will get brighter. And you've got a little reset button here. If you press this, it will put it back exactly how it was. And then we've got a colour wheel. If I wanted to add shadows and dark areas to be more sort of purple, just on an extreme case, you see as I move it, they'll start to shift towards purple. Obviously that looks horrid, so don't do that too much. And then we've got gamma, which is like the mid-tones in our colours. So if I move that, you should see it brightening. Reset it. And then we've got gain, which is like our highlights, like our sky, our white and our bright objects. So if I move this to the right, it's just exposing the bright objects. And then offset, that works on the entire image. So if I move that to right, that's affecting the entire image. So I'm just moving my mouse to the right. But I'm quite happy with how that looks out of the camera. I'm going to add another node. So I press Alt and S, right click, give it a node label. We're going to call this white balance. What we can do with this is adjust the temperature of our image. If we want to make it look sort of more blue, we can move it to the left. If we want to make it more yellow, we can move it to the right. If you set it to 0, that puts it back to default. Next up, we're going to add another serial node. Go Alt S, label it contrast. This will have quite a big effect on it. If I move my contrast to the right, the image will get darker and more saturated. If I move it to the left, it'll get more pale. So around about there is looking good. Add another node, label it S-curve. And what I'm going to do with this is just make sure that you have this window open. It should look like this with some graphs and a bar. If I put a little dot here, I'm just going to pull down the shadows ever so slightly and make another marker just about here and lift it up. We see that's having quite a nice effect on the exposure of our image. Alt and S to add another node. We're going to call this one saturation. On most DJI drones, if I set the saturation between sort of 50 to 60, it looks really good. This is really going to boost our colours. I'm moving it to the right now. We should see our colours really starting to pop. So I'm super happy with how the colours are starting to look on that. If I move my playhead along, we see the colours look kind of bright and vibrant. So as it goes up, I say those colours are really good. And what we can do, if we like how this looks, and we want to apply it to the rest of our footage, because I've shot this in D-Cine-like, so those are already flat. All I need to do is hold down Command, select each clip, and then middle mouse on this clip, and that's going to copy our colours onto each of the other clips. So it'll look a lot better, and then you can adjust each one individually. And that's how we do the basics of colour grading. Now that I'm happy how my colours looking, my edit's coming together, it's time to deliver it. So I go to the delivery button, and then up here you've got different options for various platforms. You can do a custom export if you need it to export at certain settings. But for most of you exporting for YouTube, I just come up to here and it's got a load of presets. I'm going to go with 2160 because that's what I shoot on all the time. Give the file a name. Choose a location for my file. So I'll put mine on the desktop so I can find it quickly. Press save. And then you can adjust any of the settings. Like you can have MP4 or QuickTime. If it's for YouTube, MP4 works great. H.264 works great for YouTube and any other platforms. If you haven't signed into a YouTube account, you can untick this, and then you just press add to render queue, and then you just press render all, and it's going to export your video ready for YouTube. If you want to connect DaVinci Resolve to your social media account, just go up to DaVinci Resolve, Preferences, and then we're looking for System, and then on the left hand side you've got Internet Account, and then you can just basically go through a sign-in process and it'll ask you to verify who you are. Once you've verified it, you should see it should look something like this. It will say you're signed in to the various accounts, and once you've done that, that will allow you to deliver directly to YouTube, which will save you a lot of time. And you can automate multiple videos, so if you have several timelines, you can put them in a render queue and upload all of them to YouTube in one go. Well, if you're finding this helpful, a like and subscribe would be appreciated. If you didn't like it, hit that dislike twice, and thanks for watching.